Have you been curious about vaccines? Have you maybe seen or experienced a vaccine injury yourself or in your child? And what I'm here to say is that I've been there as well, and I am here to listen to you, to the parents, to those who are having these experiences, because there is truth in that. Welcome to the Radiant Health and Wellness community. Throughout each video training and masterclass, we explore perspectives designed to empower you and activate your radiant health, wellness, and vitality. My name is Dr. Beata Harashi, and I created the Radiant Health Protocol, an integrative system utilizing 6 pillars to master your health and wellness from within as you make your body your ally on your journey to optimal well-being. This protocol is the solution for various signs and symptoms, stages of life, diagnoses, and conditions. Join us as we take a deep dive into just one aspect of health and wellness right now. And these episodes are for educational purposes only. Please consult with your physician or a practitioner before making any changes. Let's go. Your journey to radiant health starts here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Links Masterclass, where we explore the root causes of autism, ADHD, and sensory challenges. My name is Dr. Beata, and I'm a holistic and integrative doctor, and I'll be guiding you through this journey. This section that I'm going to be presenting now is part 3 of the full masterclass series. So if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2 yet, make sure that you click the link below. It's either in the comments or the description, and sign up to get full access to the masterclass. Each section builds on itself, and you can just watch this part as well. And there are lots of bonus resources that I'm offering in this masterclass series. So again, in order to get all of those, you do have to sign up for the free masterclass series. And again, all you do is enter your email, and you get everything dripped into your inbox. And there is also a private members portal area. So in order to get access to that, as soon as you enter your email, the next page that comes up, all you have to do is scroll all the way down, make sure you make it to the bottom of that page, and select your free ticket to get access to that free members area as well, okay? So what we're going to do is, again, we're exploring the body, the brain, the gut, and nervous system, and how all those pieces interact when we're talking about autism, ADHD, sensory differences, and other neurodevelopmental and neuroimmune conditions. So you can still feel engaged and connected even though this session is pre-recorded. And feel free to drop your aha moments in the chat or comments section, share your experiences or questions. I will come back around and answer questions. And again, this is public, so feel free to share as much or as little as you're comfortable with. And again, in that private members portal area is a little bit more of a private community where you can share there as well. And as always, this masterclass is for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not medical advice. Please consult your physician or practitioner before making any changes to health routines, treatments, or therapies. Now, we are going to dive deep into vaccines in this section of this masterclass series. And it is so important to look at all aspects of this controversial concept, right, that many people are talking about. And the question I have for you before we jump in is, have you been curious about vaccines? Have you maybe seen or experienced a vaccine injury yourself or in your child? And what I'm here to say is that I've been there as well, and I am here to listen to you, to the parents, to those who are having these experiences, because there is truth in that. And we're going to dive deeper into how everything works so you get an idea of, again, those pieces of the puzzle and connect the dots for your situation. And also, we're going to start exploring some of the things that you can do, some of the options that you have. And again, this is a topic that I'm so passionate about. So I'm going to put a lot out there, but I'm going to try to keep it as brief as I can. And that's why, again, in your inbox, you're going to get a lot more research and information and resources to support your own research, because as much as I have my experiences and I've done the research, I also encourage each of you to make your own informed decisions. I'm not here to tell you what to do, okay? So I'm going to supply you the evidence, and you are going to be able to look at this and make your own decisions based on that. And I'm here to help support and guide if you have questions as well. So again, just starting off, that this is not medical advice. Every family must make their own decisions. And from part 2, if you or your child show signs of the genetic mutations that we discussed, it's worth pausing and considering your approach carefully when we're talking about vaccines. And part 2, we finish off talking about the toxic load. And so again, when we're talking about toxins in the environment or medically, we need to be talking about vaccines. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to present the information, to educate, and for you to make your own decisions. And again, if you or your child shows signs of those genetic mutations or signs or symptoms that we talked about, it's worth pausing and considering your approach. The body of evidence that I'm going to be presenting today and the research references I'm including, again, you're going to get all of that in your inbox. I have, over 20 pages, I think, of resources and studies that are supporting these concepts and this truth. So this is not something that I'm making up. There are lots of other medical providers and well-known doctors speaking on this topic as well. And these are people that I've learned from. I've read the research, I've looked at the studies as well, and I have personal experience and professional experience helping others on this journey as well. And so again, what we're going to be looking at is a challenge to the prevailing presumption that vaccines are safe and effective. And I'm going to show you a science that informs a holistic root cause approach, and especially for those subset of patients who may have had a regression or develop a developmental regression or developed a chronic illness following vaccination. This is really important for you guys as well. Now, I'm going to start this slide and many of the others going forward with the saying that I truly believe is that we all do the best that we can with what we know at the given time. So I'm not presenting this to shame or blame or guilt you. I am here to start helping you explain and understand what's going on, and then be able to make decisions going forward from here. So there's no shame, no blame, no guilt. Again, I have been in your shoes, and I have had things, made decisions that at this point in my journey, I would not have made those same decisions. And at the time, that's all I knew, okay? I want to start off with that. Now, we're going to look at vaccine components because they can be a significant trigger in the perfect storm of factors. So we talked about the perfect storm again in part 2. And it is also important to mention that for many, many families and individuals, the vaccine is the piece of the puzzle that breaks the camel's back, that all of a sudden there's a regression, that the symptoms come up and signs come up. Now, there are also cases that I've come across where there are babies and mothers who weren't recently vaccinated. Okay, so they had a vaccine-free pregnancy, the child never got vaccinated, and the child still has an autism or ADHD diagnosis or signs or symptoms. So this is important to mention, that it is not one size fits all, and it's important to listen and understand and validate everyone's experiences. And now I know for many of us, again, the vaccine injury, and we're going to go way deeper into that in a couple minutes, is where we saw our child's light go out, where we saw them stop developing, where we saw all of a sudden them forget how to walk, or so many other things. I'm trying not to get too emotional. Now, when we think of it this way, okay, a child might be born with a genetic blueprint that makes detoxification harder. Perhaps, again, they have SNPs in the anti-HFR or COMT genes or others that we discussed earlier. Then they encounter the modern world, right? So there's pesticides in the environment. There's folic acid prenatally, or like in prenatal vitamins or in our food, right? That we're eating potentially as mom is eating while the child is developing or the child is eating. There are plastics in the environment. There are maybe a course of antibiotics or multiple antibiotics. Maybe there's Tylenol, etc. So what this means is that the toxic load bucket is already filling up. And again, the total toxic load is the cumulative burden of everything on the body's detoxification and immune systems. Now, again, for some children or individuals, a vaccine can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And for others who didn't get vaccines, a different toxin or trigger can do the same thing. Or it can be a slow exposure over time to, again, a toxin or trigger. So we have to honor each individual's journey. And that's my job as a holistic doctor, is to look at the whole person, whether it is a child or an adult standing in front of me, and understand what is their unique health journey and experience, and how do we support them specifically. So when we're looking at vaccines, one of the biggest concerns is the ingredients. And we're going to look at some of these specific ingredients that do raise questions. Now, these are just some of them. Again, for those who register, you'll get color-coded pages. You can see an example of one in the bottom corner there. It's tiny. You're going to get the big version of that, where you literally get color-coded pages with the vaccine ingredients and what they actually are. And I'll show you how you can access the vaccine inserts as well. So we're going to start first off just talking about aluminum, which is an adjuvant in vaccines. And what that means is it's used to provoke a stronger immune response. So again, I've put a lot on this slide. I'm going to just go through this briefly. Essentially, aluminum is a heavy metal. Okay. When we inject this, it can generate persistent neuroinflammation. All right. That is the main takeaway. Aluminum can create persistent neuroinflammation. Then there's thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative, which is now largely removed from childhood vaccines, but it has been used as a preservative in multi-dose vials. And just until recently, there was still some use of it in, I believe, multi-dose flu vials. So what I want you to know is that mercury is a potent neurotoxin. Again, this is proven. This is not something that I'm making up. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin. Next, we're going to talk about polysorbate 80, which is an emulsifier in the vaccines, and it helps stabilize the vaccine mixture. Now, the important part about polysorbate 80 is that it increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. And we're going to go deeper in this in the next couple of slides. But again, I want to present this in an order that will make sense to you and that you can, again, start connecting those dots. So polysorbate 80 is important to remember as well. Now, the other thing that's important to know is that there are human fetal cell lines, which have been used as a medium to grow viruses for vaccines. And this is for the MMR vaccine, for varicella, for hepatitis A, and others. So what this means is that there could be residual human DNA and retroviral fragments in the vaccines. And this could potentially contribute to an autoimmune response. So just like if you had an organ transplant, you would need medication to suppress your immune system because your immune system is trying to reject it often in organ transplant situations. The same thing can potentially happen here because you are getting human DNA fragments from someone else. So this can trigger an autoimmune response. Does that make sense to you? And then we're also going to mention on this page, again, there's others, but formaldehyde. This is used to inactivate viruses or toxins. However, it is a known carcinogen and can cause protein and DNA damage. So just looking at this short list that I've included on this slide, how do you feel about those ingredients? Is this something that you would want being injected into your baby, into your child, into you as an adult? This is a highly polarized topic, but one that mainstream media, and oh gosh, not even mainstream media, right? But mainstream medicine dismisses these concerns outright. As soon as someone asks, well, what about, right, the aluminum? we're met with, oh no, a little bit won't hurt. And we've talked about this in part 2, okay? That our role is to navigate this with scientific integrity and compassion and listen to the parents and individuals who have had reactions and start asking the questions of why. Do these ingredients play a role in that? Do these ingredients potentially create a vaccine injury? And so what do we do with this information that we're going to be presenting in this section? Because we don't want to operate from a place of fear. We want to be in a place of empowerment and preparation. And so at Radiant Health and Wellness, we focus on limiting exposure. That is the biggest factor that we have agency over, that we have control over. Limiting exposure. And then we need to look at optimizing gut health and ensuring nourishment. So nutrient status is so important, and mineral status. And then we need to understand a child's or individual's genetic risks before any vaccine is given. And we want to empty our toxic load bucket as much as possible for everyone. We are living in such a toxic world that we need to be continually focusing on decreasing our toxin exposure. And we are all about informed and individualized decision-making. So I'm here to have calm and open discussions with parents about their concerns and create a plan that feels right for their children or themselves, right? The unique biology of the person in front of me. And I'm not a pediatrician, so I don't give vaccines at all. And I am here to advocate for you. I am a provider that listens. I'm a provider that believes you and that will stand with you. And if needed, if there is a post-vaccination injury or if support is needed, we have strategies to support the body's natural detoxification processes, to rebalance the gut, to help the body return to a state of balance for optimal function and well-being and quality of life, to decrease neuroinflammation. And so no matter where you are on the spectrum or this journey, know that there is always something that we can do. Okay, this is about empowerment. And again, make sure that you sign up if you haven't yet, if you're watching this on YouTube or social media, so you can get those color-coded pages. Those themselves are priceless, just so you can see all the ingredients. And again, I'll show you how to access the vaccine inserts themselves as well. So now we need to talk about the US childhood vaccine schedule. Now, other countries may have similar ones. Myself being in the US, this is the one that I am most familiar with. And again, if you're outside of the US, you will have to do a little bit of your own digging. However, many of these are similar. Okay, so there are similarities here. Now, again, everyone's going to make their own decisions, and mainstream media promotes this false presumption that vaccines are safe and effective. And this goes from individual vaccines and the full schedule. So let's just break this down, okay? When we're talking about from birth to 18 months of age, okay, before 2 years of age, if you follow the vaccine schedule, a child is exposed to over 90 unique antigens, over 90. These are the individual infectious components. What that translates into is about 54 doses. So this depends how sometimes vaccines are broken up. If they're given in something like an MMR V, which used to be the MMR with the chickenpox, which is not recommended anymore. Okay, so if your practitioner is still offering that, you can kindly let them know that the research is not supporting that anymore, right? So there's different combinations that these vaccines come in. And so 54 doses, right? 18 months old. When we're looking at up to 18 years old, we're looking at over 150 unique antigen exposures. Now, when you really think about this, the childhood vaccine schedule represents a massive, specific, and deliberate challenge to the developing immune system. And we are often told, right, not to worry because children encounter thousands of germs every day. Now, this is a misleading comparison, and this is important to note that when there's a natural exposure, okay, so when a child encounters a bacteria or a virus naturally, what happens is it first encounters our mucus barriers. This is like the front gate. And when we get exposure through our mucus barrier, our immune system, our body naturally primes a balanced Th1 response. Okay, so this is, you don't have to remember all of the specifics of this, but it's going to be important to note this, okay, that there's a mucus barrier, which is our front gate. That's what all viruses, bacteria, when we're exposed to them naturally, have to go through. It could be in the skin, in the lungs, in our gut. These are the body's primary defense systems, and they're designed to filter and process pathogens in a specific way. Most never make it into our bloodstream because our body takes care of it beforehand. Now, with vaccination, this is an intramuscular injection. It goes directly into the systemic circulation. This is a backdoor approach, okay? These exposures are not going through the natural mucus barrier, they're going through the back door. This bypasses this first critical step in immune defenses and can contribute to something called an imbalanced Th2 immune response. So what this means is the vaccine bypasses the first line defenses. It's injected directly, and it has an adjuvant like aluminum, which is designed to create a stronger, more alarming danger signal to provoke a robust immune response. Now, again, we're told that these products are safe and effective, but this claim is based on a foundation that would never be acceptable for any other medical product given to healthy children. Individual vaccines are often tested against active placebos. So when they're doing studies and trials, they're testing one vaccine against another vaccine, not an inert saline. That is what would be the gold standard. So you would give a vaccine and you would inject a saline solution, where one is inert, which means it does nothing, versus the vaccine, and then you can compare apples to apples. However, this doesn't happen. I'm sorry, apples to oranges, okay? What they're doing is they're comparing apples to apples and seeing if there are different injuries from that. Does that make sense to you? And when we look at the entire cumulative schedule, it has never been tested in a long-term double-blinded placebo-controlled study. This is the gold standard. So when we actually look at the science and the research, they have never been proven safe. And in the trials that have done any version of that, it has been a very short follow-up. So it has been days or weeks and not months or years. So they're not looking at potential long-term effects. And that's really important when we're talking about vaccine injuries and all the different ways that they can present, which we're going to go in depth in a couple minutes. Now, there is the chart that I have here, okay, on this slide. And this chart is showing disease decline alongside vaccine introduction. And so, actually, let me say that backward. There are charts that show a disease decline alongside vaccine introduction, but this is a classic case of mistaking, right, correlation for causation, because when we look at this chart, okay, the data shows that the most significant drop in mortality from diseases like measles, scarlet fever, and typhoid actually occurs years and sometimes decades before vaccines were introduced, thanks to public health measures like better sanitation, nutrition, hygiene. So when we're actually looking at this, we've been heard, right? We've heard propaganda that vaccines cause the decline in mortality from these diseases. And that, when you actually look at the historical data, is false, okay? And there have been other scenarios where there have been diseases that there are no vaccines for example, scarlet fever, that there still is a decline, okay, in mortality from it, even without a vaccine. And it follows the exact same pattern as the other conditions. So it makes you think, does that make sense to you? Was it really the vaccines? This is an opportunity to stop and question. okay? And even historical data from the US CDC, the mortality rates from measles have declined by over 95% in the decades prior to the introduction of the vaccine in 1963. So again, let's look at how has this data been skewed? How has it been propagandized? Okay. And let's take a little bit of a critical approach to this. Now, let's also talk about the infant's first day. So when you have a baby in a hospital, for example, first day, they are pushing the hepatitis B and vitamin K injection. But when we take a moment and really think about it, why does a newborn whose primary risks, right, or whose primary roles rather are to learn to breathe and eat, why does an infant need a vaccine for a bloodborne and sexually transmitted disease on their first day of life? And especially when mom tests negative. The rationale for this universal administration does not make any sense. And then even the vitamin K shot, while it can prevent a rare bleeding disorder, it's often administered without fully informed consent regarding its ingredients and necessity for all infants. And there's also a moment to pause. And if you believe in a divine creator and a higher power, do you think that our creator and our higher power would set us up for failure from the start? Maybe there's a reason why infants are born with low vitamin K. And there's actually, again, research to support this. So again, as long as you sign up for the masterclass, you're going to get these resources in your inbox. Now, there's also this approach of one size fits all with the schedule, right? There's no individualization. You just come in for your 2-month visit and you get the 2-month shots. You come in for your 4-month visit and you get the 4-month shots. And quite honestly, there are precautions and contraindications that our pediatrician ignored and others do as well. And again, these vaccines are given in multiples. So what happens is there's a schedule that is rigid. There's no consideration for a child's genetic background, family medical history, or even current health status much of the time, unless parents advocate. And again, many infants get multiple vaccines in a single visit at 2 months old. The immune system challenge of this practice has never been rigorously studied against a control group receiving inert saline or even fewer or spaced out vaccines. So can you see how this whole premise of being safe and effective has actually never been proven? Does this make sense for you? Are you getting this? Are you getting how important this is? Because this is the foundation of their argument. But when you really look at the foundation, it's not there. So how does this make sense? Even the Institute of Medicine made the statement that when they were doing a review, the committee encountered a paucity of randomized clinical trials that directly address the safety of an entire immunization schedule. None of the studies has compared the health outcomes of entirely unimmunized children with fully immunized children. And you may have heard recently about Aaron Siri, who has been bringing up some inconvenient studies that have been done that have actually looked at vaccinated versus unvaccinated populations. And the results of those studies are pretty important. They're showing autoimmune rates, asthma rates, allergy rates significantly higher in the vaccinated group than the unvaccinated group. Now, there is a lot of criticism for these studies because the biggest one of over, I believe it's 18,000 participants has not been formally published because the authors are afraid of the rebuttal, right? What will happen when they release this information? And there's a whole documentary on this that I will share again with everyone who registers. And there's another study that has been retracted because, again, it is threatening to the current medical system. And so there are many critics who are saying, oh, it was retracted, et cetera. When you really look at it, the authors did not agree to the retraction. And again, both of these studies you are going to get access to. in my documents when you sign up for the masterclass. Now, when we're talking about research, it's important to know that I actually have a research background and research experience. So I am not an academic by any means. However, through my schooling and through my years, I actually became a published author in a NIH study, National Institute of Health study. This was part of my doctorate, and it's under my maiden name, Hrynkiewicz. So if you try to Google Beata Harashim, it won't come up there, but under Beata Hrynkiewicz, it will be there. And yes, I also speak Polish for those who are wondering, and a little bit of Spanish. But I also was on a research team earlier when I was getting my nutrition degree. Now, this study was funded by a large organization, and the purpose was to show that their food product increased muscle mass and endurance in athletes. So I was part of this research team, and my role was to take the macro and micronutrient calculations and create and put together meals based on the food that was accessible at the dining hall. So I had to be a little creative, and we had to, calculate all the things. Now, this was a fantastic experience, and I'm so grateful to have been on this research team. But this is what's interesting. What actually ended up happening was that the results of the study were not what was expected. It was not what the funding source was looking for. So instead of publishing the findings, the study was swept under the rug. Now, this happens more often than you think, because the funding source is important to be aware of, and the narrative that they are pushing or that they want to prove and support. This goes both ways as well, okay? Now, that's why it's so important to be able to look at research critically. And this is just a little funny aside, is that during this research experience is also where I discovered that I will never be a surgeon. So what happened is during this study that we were doing, that we had doctors on the team, we had a whole host of medical providers, and they were taking muscle biopsies, and I was there physically present watching this happen. And this was the first time that I pretty much fainted by seeing an open wound right in front of me. And I also say this because I have so much respect for surgeons, for medical professionals who do these life-saving procedures, because that is so important. I'm not here to, talk badly about the whole medical profession at all. And when we're looking at chronic conditions, when we're looking at vaccine injuries, the current medical system is not here to support us. They don't know what to do. You talk about gut health with a mainstream medical provider, and they have no clue. I've had clients who have their own providers as well, and we work together side by side. And, I've done a gut health test on them, and they bring the results to their doctor and even a GI, and they say, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't want to look at it, okay? And even practitioners who are mainstream but label themselves as gut health experts, they really don't know about this. They don't know what to do about this. They don't really know how to support gut health. And this is the difference. So it takes a moment for you to think about what the practitioners that you've been seeing, the providers that you've been seeing, how has your experience been with them? Are they supportive? Are they able to look at root causes? Are they able to hear you and believe you and validate your experience and work together for a solution or for a plan that feels good to you? Or do they only push supplements or pills? This is the difference in care that I provide. This is the difference in relationship that I have with my clients. Again, with everything, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you uncover and discover this yourself. Connect the dots yourself. And obviously, I'm here to guide you through this journey. But you, as the client or as the parent, is a vital piece of the team and a vital piece of the health journey. Now, as we go through, vaccines, we need to talk about what happened in the 80s. Because in the early 1980s, there was a series of lawsuits related to the diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus vaccine, DPT. This was fueled by tons of media coverage. And Plaintiffs' lawyers were successfully arguing that the entire vaccine design was defective, not just that a specific batch was contaminated. And so what ended up happening were that juries began awarding massive damages. So in 1986, there was a case where the jury awarded $15 million to the parents of a child who suffered brain damage from the DPT vaccine. Now, again, some critics will say this is a new age thing. This is a new thing talking about vaccines and vaccine injuries. No, this has been going on for decades. Decades. Families have been fighting for their children for decades. And this is not a new concept. This is not a new concept. This is well documented. Now, what happened in 1986 is that vaccine manufacturers, sorry, I told myself I wouldn't get too emotional, but here I am. Again, I'm so passionate about this topic. It has touched me personally and so many others that I've met and the thousands and millions that I haven't yet. So what happened is that vaccine manufacturers argued that the cost of litigation made vaccine production unsustainable and it made it a financial risk. So they were threatening to leave the vaccine business altogether. Now, what this would do is it would create a shortage of vaccines, and Congress saw this as a threat to public health, and they passed the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act. This created a compensation system, but what it also did is it insulated pharmaceutical companies from litigation, which means that you cannot sue them. So what this did is it removed a major incentive from companies to maximize safety, and it transferred the liability from the industry, from the vaccine industry to the government, with our taxpayer dollars paying out for injuries. And the fact that you can't sue the vaccine manufacturers for injury says everything about who they're really protecting. And it's not the children. It's not us. The National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, also known as VICP, has paid out over $5 billion in awards since its inception, acknowledging that vaccine injuries are real. This is documented and this is real. However, only a tiny fraction of claims are successful because it's notoriously difficult for families. The government is both the defendant and the judge in this situation. And again, it's our taxpayer money that's being paid out anyway. And vaccine manufacturers, they have immunity. There's also the VAERS, VAERS system, which tracks adverse events. And you know what happens? This is highly underreported because our pediatrician didn't report our adverse event. Most pediatricians don't. Most pediatricians may not even know this VAERS exists. And honestly, most parents don't know either. So what ends up happening is many children end up having a vaccine injury that goes unreported. The dots are not connected. So the numbers in VAERS are staggering as they are, and they're actually highly underrepresented. This means that vaccine injury is not rare. It is real and it is more prevalent than we can even imagine. And overall, the lack of market liability, right? The vaccine manufacturers not having liability removes the incentive for them to pursue the absolute safest products possible. Again, this is real. This at times can sound made up, but it is real. And again, I'm going to provide you with all the sources and the documentation when you sign up for the masterclass. Now we need to understand that there's a spectrum of what vaccine injuries can look like. And vaccine reactions can look and present in different ways in different times. Now, again, I'm here to let you know that we all do the best that we can with what we know. The conventional medical model is trained to look for immediate dramatic events. But in the functional and integrative model, we see a much broader spectrum of responses that tell us a child or adult system is having a reaction, that there is an injury. And the truth is, again, vaccine injury is not as rare as we once thought it is, especially when we learn to read the subtler signs of the body in distress. And again, it's important to ground this in fact. The VAERS system tracks adverse events. It is real. It has paid out over $5 billion through the VICP to individuals with recognized vaccine injuries. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a publicly documented compensation program. So important to understand that. Now, there are so many different adverse events. And again, at times, correlation does not equal causation. We have to keep that in the back of our minds. But a temporal sign or a timing, right, is the first step in identifying a potential problem. And there are thousands of reports in VAERS which detail infants dying within days of vaccination. This has been pushed into and classified as SIDS, sudden and infant death syndrome. However, this link and literally the timing and the death is so close that it demands rigorous investigation, not dismissal. And this is even again supported with evidence. In 2011, human and experimental toxicology found that the US childhood immunization schedule requires that the most vaccines in the first 6 months of life. And this period coincides with the peak in SIDS mortality. This study also found a positive correlation between the number of vaccine doses and the infant mortality rate across developed nations. Okay. And the CDC states that multiple studies have found no causal link, right, between vaccines and SIDS. However, there are so many families with this timing, okay? There is a timing, there is a temporal association that is there. And this is what parents are concerned about. This is what parents are reporting. This is what parents are seeing and experiencing. And we're just talking about SIDS right now. There is a whole clinical picture that we're going to talk about. And there are thousands, if not millions, of parents who have seen this happen. A child is doing well, developing normally, gets a vaccine, regresses, loses their ability to walk, to communicate, to interact. They're not there. This happens over and over again, as well as other adverse events. So let's look at the clinical picture, right? We've talked about how vaccines are not natural. Unlike a natural infection, again, they bypass that front gate and they use the back door and they create an imbalanced Th2 response. So we can think of these responses in two categories. First are the acute red flags, the body's immediate alarm bells, okay? So these are the reactions that are officially recognized and often reported to VAERS. They're the body's cry for help. So this is where there's a high fever post-vaccination. There can be seizures, anaphylaxis, significant swelling at the injection site, persistent high-pitched crying, and extreme fussiness. So many parents have experienced this, including myself. Developmental regression, developmental pause, where development just stops, and even death. These acute symptoms are a direct sign of significant neuroinflammation, an inflammatory and immune assault. The high-pitched cry is a hallmark sign that many clinicians recognize as a potential sign of encephalitis or brain inflammation. Read the inserts. These are listed on there. These are the side effects that are listed in the inserts. There are even black box warnings which warn that death is a possibility. Now, there are subtler chronic signs as well. This is the body's ongoing SOS, the white flag is asking for help. This is where we need to become master detectives and our own holistic doctor decoding the body. So in the days, weeks, or months following vaccination, we may see a shift in a child's baseline health. This is not coincidence, it is a consequence. The immune system has been tipped into a state of dysregulation. Now, this can lead to chronic congestion, frequent ear infections, asthma. These are all signs of a Th2 response, the immune system being overactivated in an inappropriate, unnatural way. There could be digestive issues like constipation, diarrhea, bloating, or reflux. There can be developmental regression or pause. So these can be the loss of skills, interaction, again, eye contact, words, etc. There could be new sensory sensitivities or emotional dysregulation. There could be also subtle signs like toe walking, hand flapping, OCD-like behaviors that pop up. And the emergence of autoimmunity, severe eczema, allergies, even cancer. Now, again, these ultimately can become diagnoses of autism, ADHD, sensory challenges, etc. And this is the clinical picture that many are seeing even in their babies. This is actually how I started. I started working with babies. And when you start seeing these that young, you start connecting the dots. And again, know that there is so much that you can do to support your child or yourself if you're an adult who has experienced this. Now, again, many people say, I vaccinated my child and they're fine. But what does that really mean? When you see the chain of events, right? A well child visit leads to a chronic systemic immune dysregulation. There's chronic conditions and issues. We cannot ignore this timeline, this timing sequence. And again, for susceptible children, the vaccine doesn't just cause a fever. It initiates a chronic systemic immune dysregulation. So recognizing the timeline, knowing what to look out for, the predispositions, the signs, this is the first step towards stopping the cycle and beginning true root cause healing. And again, for those who register, I have research, studies, books, documentaries to share with you so that you can do your own research and educate yourself and see for yourself, right? Make the decision. So one of the biggest fears that I hear from parents is that if I don't vaccinate, my child won't be able to go to school. I want to clear this up that this is a myth. Okay. The truth is that there are various kinds of exemptions from vaccination for school in all 50 states. Now, in all 50, you have a provision for a medical exemption. What this means is that typically there has already been some kind of vaccine injury. So these are typically granted for situations like a child who goes into anaphylactic shock or has a seizure following a vaccination. Here's the catch though. Getting a medical exemption can be incredibly difficult. Many doctors are hesitant to write them. And in some states, like California, we've seen medical providers actually lose their licenses and their practices for writing these medical exemptions. This creates a climate of fear that leaves parents feeling trapped, right? So what are the other options? Most states offer something called a religious exemption. What this is a statement saying that vaccinating is against your sincere religious beliefs. It can be very simple. And I want to be very clear that this does not mean that you have to belong to an organized religion, and you can find religion at any time. The Supreme Court has upheld this, and it is protected other than a few states, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, again, if you have a deeply held belief that you do not harm your child and you have seen what you believe is a vaccine injury, you can write a religious exemption. If you know that there are aborted fetal cells that these vaccines are based off of, and that is against your religion, you can write a religious exemption. There are many different perspectives that you can use for your religion to write these. Now, I have resources again for those who sign up for the masterclass. In your inbox, you will get an email with a resource for this. This is not legal advice, and this is something that you can use to base off of. You have to do your own research for your specific state and what they require, etc. Now, one thing I do want to mention as well, talking about religion, is that in the Radiant Health Protocol, we do work with the divine. Now, this doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what you call your higher power. This is not an organized religion that I'm promoting or anything like that. And whatever you call your higher power, so it can be God, it can be Christ, it can be Yeshua, it can be creator, it can be universe, it can be source. We work with the divine for healing and guidance on our health journeys. And this is where, again, this is integrative and all perspectives are taken into account. Now, there are also a handful of states that have philosophical or personal belief exemptions. And again, it's critical to understand because there are 5 states, California, New York, Connecticut, Maine, and West Virginia, that have removed both religious and philosophical exemptions. So you need to know your state's laws first. And actually, this picture on this slide is over 10,000 of us in Connecticut in 2021 protesting against the religious exemption being removed. This has turned families' lives upside down. And this is where my personal advocacy started, because we were directly affected in 2021 when this law was passed. My daughter had the year of school to finish up. And then she was clearly told at 4 years old to not bother coming back to school if we were not going to vaccinate. And this was not just our family, it was thousands of families in Connecticut that experienced this. Thousands of families whose kids were kicked out of school for no reason other than our religious beliefs. And this is real. This has happened again in other states as well. And we have been fighting this and advocating against this since then, myself personally and organizations before this as well. Now, what has happened is a lot of these families have had to homeschool, and we homeschooled for a period of time as well. And so I have homeschool resources for you as well. And again, each state varies by law, so you have to find out what is the requirements and what are the laws in your state. And we ultimately ended up moving for our liberties and our freedom. And so I have resources for you. And I am a big advocate in Connecticut still and now in Massachusetts for both medical freedom, for homeschooling freedom, for parental choice. Okay. I've lived this, and this is near and dear to my heart. And I'm here to stand up for you and to support this community. Just recently, maybe a month, maybe actually a month ago, I was at a public hearing again where the Northeast is trying to create a public health collaborative, et cetera, and all the implications of that. So just so you know, I am active in this community. I'm here to advocate for you, and I'm here to support you from the health side as well. This is something, again, I'm so passionate about, and I will not stop talking about. Now, as I'm not a medical doctor, I do not write medical exemptions. That's the question that often comes after this discussion. What I can do is provide you with resources and guidance if you are considering a religious exemption for your family. And this naturally leads to the question, so what do you actually do, Dr. Beata? So my role is to work with you and your family on a much deeper, more personalized level. While your pediatrician or family doctor or local urgent care manages like well child visits and more acute matters, I am here to be your partner in building foundational health and resilience. And I support you and your child with personalized consultations and comprehensive custom plans, therapeutic diets and lifestyle guidance to reduce inflammation, support the gut, the brain, and the immune system. We are healing at the root cause level. I educate on safe and effective detoxification strategies. Like I mentioned earlier, I actually started my private practice working with infants and breastfeeding moms and their babies for the reason that that's where I started with my daughter. And so working with this extremely sensitive population, I've learned what is safe, what is effective, and I've been able to extrapolate that to older children and even adults as well. And that is the beauty of this whole approach. We're going to talk more about breastfeeding coming up as well. And so I also help you get insights from functional testing to understand what's happening beneath the surface. This is another part of decoding the body, using the testing that we have available that is relevant to you or your child to understand what's going on the inside. There can be targeted supplement support when necessary. And again, this is individualized. I like to go real food, whole food as much as possible. And at times there is some supplementation necessary, but we only do it when it's necessary. And I only work with the highest quality supplements. Okay, because many supplements are full of preservatives, additives, etc. So if you are working with practitioners or have seen it again online somewhere, make sure that you look into what these supplements are, what they contain, and again, if it's appropriate for you, because sometimes and many times they're not. And then most importantly, I'm here as a health coach in the sense that I'm here to support you emotionally, especially the parents of children, going through this journey. I understand how stressful, how overwhelming it can feel, and how much support matters. When we need to share what's going on, when we need to vent, when we need guidance, I'm here for you because I know what that feels like. I keep you accountable, right? I have the systems, the steps laid out, and I'm here to keep you accountable and make sure that we're moving forwards. I'm here to connect you with a community of like-minded individuals and families who are all about root cause healing, who understand what a difference this makes and are here for the journey. And I'm here to be your fiercest advocate, whether it is in legal scenarios or in health scenarios with your 504s, with your IEPs, I'm here to advocate with you. And this does mean that I can help you write letters right on your behalf. So this can help you navigate the process for 504 plans and IEPs at school. I will be there to troubleshoot with you. So no matter what you have going on, you're not alone, okay, on this journey. I'm here to support you. So when I work with clients, we go through that full consultation. So I know your background, I know your history, we come up with a plan, and then we troubleshoot and we work together step by step. I'm holding your hand through this process so that we can figure out your root cause or your child's, and we can address it appropriately. I will work with you to find solutions that work for you, no matter what, okay? So if you're ready to take this process deeper and truly invest in a personalized plan for your family's health, I have a way for you to get started. I'm opening up a few spots for my Gut Health VIP program. And to help you get immediate value, I've shared so many of the first steps and resources throughout this masterclass series. And everyone who signs up for the masterclass, again, and especially gets their free ticket in the members portal area, will also get bonus resources on navigating school exemptions, homeschooling, all the research studies, the documentaries, books, etc., and more. And so if you're watching on YouTube or social media and you're feeling ready to get support that you've been searching for, here's what I want you to do. Number one is click the link below. Again, it's either in the comments or the description, and sign up for the free masterclass using the link. When you enter your email, make sure that you scroll all the way to the bottom of that second page and get your free ticket into that members portal area. And then in the comments section below the video here, simply type the word support if you're ready for more and you want to be the first to know when the doors to my VIP program for the next cohort open. This way I'll be able to reach out to you and get you that information. So I want to thank you for being here, for taking the courage to ask the tough questions and to look for truth and real answers. I am here to support you. And I want you to know that there are many success stories. I literally just got off the phone with another mom whose child is now in college and is thriving and doing well, so well, because of the support that she gave him when he was little. So I want you to know that this is possible for you too. And again, it doesn't matter the age, even adults, we can still help. So the next piece I want to connect all the dots for you is we're going to talk about the blood-brain barrier and glutathione, okay, and Tylenol, because that was misconstrued. And again, just a tiny piece of the puzzle. So again, you may have heard the autism announcement, right, being misconstrued, saying that RFK was saying that Tylenol causes autism. Now, again, you can't take that out of context. You have to understand this whole picture. So we just talked about all the vaccine ingredients. We just talked about the impacts, right? But now let's talk about the blood-brain barrier, or BBB is the short little abbreviation there. So the blood-brain barrier is a highly selective gatekeeper between your blood and your brain, right? Its job is simple but critical. It's to allow nutrients in while keeping toxins and pathogens out. So maintaining its integrity is absolutely essential for healthy neurodevelopment. Sometimes, though, that gate can be weakened or opened. So we can think of it like certain compounds are door openers. They open that gate. One of them is polysorbate 80. So we talked about this as one of the vaccine ingredients earlier. This makes the barrier more porous and it allows substances to cross that normally wouldn't. And then we can think of the crowd rush being systemic inflammation. So it can be the immune response, it can be toxins from the vaccines, it can be infections, even environmental toxins, etc. So when we have this, we have the door open and now we have all these inflammatory compounds, they can rush in to the brain and they can signal also that gate to become leaky. So just toxin exposure can increase the permeability of that gate. Does that make sense to you? Now, this lets those inflammatory signals rush into the brain. Then there's the master defender, which is glutathione, okay? It is our master antioxidant. So think of this as your brain's head of security and maintenance. It's the body's master oxidant primary detoxifier. And glutathione is essential for putting out the fires of neuroinflammation, protecting the brain's mitochondria, which is its power source or power plants, and then maintaining the integrity of that blood-brain barrier. So when glutathione is decreased or used up, the brain's security team is understaffed and overwhelmed. Does that make sense to you? Right? Now, what are some of the ways that we can decrease glutathiones? Unknowingly, sometimes we can do that by taking acetaminophen, which is well known as Tylenol, but it also is in other medications as well. So any medication that contains acetaminophen can directly deplete glutathione based on the metabolism of that medicine. And again, acetaminophen is the most well-known glutathione depleting drug. So what it does is it uses up glutathione during its detox process and it leaves the liver and the brain vulnerable. So even normal doses can be problematic for those with impaired detox pathways like MTHFR or other variants. So this is the crazy part. Many times when children go in for a vaccination, they get a fever, which is signs that there's something going on, that there's some kind of neuroinflammation. Most pediatricians would recommend that you take Tylenol. Well, that depletes glutathione and that opens the gates even more. So now you've got a rush of the toxins from the vaccines, of the immune response flooding into the brain. This is like firing your security team right before, the building is under its greatest threat. It cripples your biggest detox pathway at the worst possible moment. Now, Tylenol is not the only medication. Like I mentioned earlier, other medications with acetaminophen will do the same thing. But we also need to talk about antibiotics, which can disrupt the gut, which is our master regulator. And this does impact the production of glutathione because the gut impacts the liver. Then there's also NSAIDs like ibuprofen, aspirin, naproxen. These all contribute to a leaky gut. And we're going to talk about what that is more going forwards. And this increases the body's inflammatory load and further challenges the blood-brain barrier. There's also statins and SSRIs, which do the same thing, and many others. So many medications increase the oxidative stress and use up or deplete the key nutrients needed to produce glutathione. So again, this leaves the body and brain more vulnerable to inflammation and toxicity. Is this making sense to you? Can you see this cascade of events? So we need to support detox pathways, which is so important, especially if you or your child has been taking medication long-term, because these have been using up your glutathione, and we want to protect and support glutathione. That is critical. This is your brain's security team. And again, when it's functioning well, the blood-brain barrier can do its job. It can keep your brain safe and support healthy development. Now, again, can you see how that whole message of just Tylenol causes autism doesn't make sense, right? Unless you look at this whole picture, because yes, it depletes glutathione, which allows more of these toxins and inflammatory responses to come into the brain, which creates neuroinflammation, which can create the signs and symptoms that we're seeing. Is this making sense to you? Are you able to now see this cascade, the steps unfolding now that you've got the background? Let me know if the comments, and let me know, have you, again, did you give Tylenol? Did you take Tylenol? This can also happen in pregnancy as well, because mom's body is going to be depleted in glutathione, and that affects baby as well. So again, all these pieces, are you connecting your own dots? So let me know in the comments. And I do want to, before we head to solutions, okay, let's complete this cycle of neuroinflammation. When the gate is open, okay, to our blood-brain barrier and the security team is down, glutathione, a destructive cycle begins. So toxins, immune signals, and inflammation that's supposed to stay out can now cross in. The brain's immune cells, which are called microglia immune cells, right? Microglia sound the alarm. They create a chronic state of inflammation. And the problem is, when this alarm stays on for too long, the fire never stops burning. This leads to oxidative stress, energy depletion in brain cells. And then the result is a brain environment that is in survival mode instead of growth mode. This greatly impacts development, speech, learning, and connection. And the most important piece is that this is a cascade of events. So there's genetic vulnerabilities. This creates the kindling, okay, for the fire. Then things like medication, glutathione depletion, gut imbalances, they add the fuel. And then immune triggers like vaccines can strike the match, or other toxin exposures, or again, infections too. So our clinical focus is on fireproofing the system. All right. Is this making sense to you? Are you getting this? So now we're going to wrap up this section of the masterclass with something that isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, and is so crucial, because we need to talk about antibiotics and the gut-brain connection. So antibiotics are sometimes necessary. They can be life-saving, but they are greatly overused and abused in the current medical model. So this is one of the shifts that has happened, where we trust and rely on the system instead of being our own holistic doctor. We have lost this skill generally as a society. So the example of this is, and again, we all do the best that we can with what we know. And, as a mom, your child starts pulling at their ears, maybe as a baby, and you go, oh no, I think they have an ear infection. Instead of being empowered and knowing your holistic practices to support a drainage of an ear infection or ear pain for healing, we go and take them to the doctor and they give us a prescription for antibiotics, right? Or our children have a cold, they have a fever, we take them to the doctor and we get a prescription of antibiotics instead of knowing holistically what we can do at home. This is also what I teach, because it is so important to be empowered as parents and even as adults to know how to take care of ourselves instead of relying on, like, I know myself when I was, again, in my teens and early adulthood, like I would rely on NyQuil, Dayquil, Sudafed, like Mucinex. I would just be taking as much over-the-counter stuff as I could, trying to suppress my cold or symptoms, instead of looking at how do I support my body holistically to move this out of my body. And I bet I actually would have felt better faster. And in the long run, it would have helped me a lot better. So again, this is just a skill that we're not taught anymore. It's not passed down through generations like it was. So we need to empower ourselves, right, in these skills. And the thing is, again, with antibiotics, they don't discriminate. So what that means is that they wipe out both harmful and beneficial bacteria. This disrupts the delicate gut microbiome balance, which is the collection of trillions of different microorganisms in our gut. But it also disrupts the gut-brain axis, which is the communication between our gut and our brain. Again, we're going to go deeper into this in the next section. This is all essential for brain and nervous system development. And again, the microbiome is this collection of trillions of microorganisms that work together. We actually have more microbiome cells than we have human cells of our own. So we are more microbiome than we are human. That is how important it is. And this dictates all of our body processes and functions. So I do want to mention again that antibiotics can be beneficial. There are a few scenarios where there are serious consequences or life-threatening situations if antibiotics aren't used. So we have to be aware of those. And again, this is part of the process that I teach, is knowing and teaching you what are the signs and symptoms to look for, when do we need something, when do we not, etc. And of course, you have your pediatricians and urgent care providers for those acute care scenarios. And even if you are taking antibiotics, how do we support your gut microbiome and balance? That is so important on this healing journey, because after exposure to antibiotics, sometimes, again, we can see symptoms of autism, ADHD, sensory challenges, other neuroimmune and neurodevelopmental conditions pop up after a round of antibiotics as well. So important to be aware of. Now, I do want to mention, like, this starts preconception. And again, I was talking to someone recently who is helping advocate for parents and mothers that are thinking about having children to start this work now. And I even have a fertility masterclass that I'll be talking about soon that is beneficial for everyone as well, because this is so important. So the reason being is that preconception, mom and dad have their own microbiome, their gut health. That gets passed down to the children, okay? Because the gut microbiome affects your DNA and genetic expression. It also affects your health and how things evolve, and especially moms, but both parents is important. And then we need to look at, right, preconception. How many rounds of antibiotics has mom had? Has dad had? Okay, what medications are they on? During pregnancy, especially for mom, we need to look at, are we taking antibiotics during pregnancy? Are we taking other medications during pregnancy? And then during birth as well. So there's something called GBS positive. If you test positive for that, you typically need IV antibiotics or multiple sometimes rounds of antibiotics during birth, and sometimes unnecessarily. Okay, this was my experience. I'm going to talk more about this later on. But what happens is that it wipes out mom's gut bacteria so that when baby is born, they're not inoculated with your healthy bacteria, with your healthy gut microbiome. And especially vaginal deliveries play a part in that, et cetera. We're going to talk more about this in, again, the next section. And then we also need to look at early life, right? How many exposures are our babies and young children exposed to antibiotics? All of these exposures add up and they create chaos in the gut microbiome, because every time we do, there are other microorganisms than bacteria. So antibiotics are specifically for bacteria. They wipe out, again, harmful and beneficial bacteria. But there's also viruses, there's funguses and yeasts, there are protozoa, etc., all in here. So what happens often is when we have antibiotics, now the yeasts may have an overgrowth or be kind of more flourishing, if you can imagine that, right? If all the bacteria have been killed off. Does that make sense to you? Again, this is deeper gut health stuff, but I just want to give you some examples to start, again, putting the pieces together for yourself. But so what ends up happening, right? Let's, again, go through a timeline. So let's say you have exposures to antibiotics. There's a microbiome imbalance, also called dysbiosis. This then alters neurotransmitter production. This is, again, in the brain, like serotonin, dopamine, GABA. This also, antibiotic exposure, creates something called leaky gut, and we'll talk more about leaky gut later. But it allows toxins and inflammatory molecules to enter the bloodstream. So just so you understand, when we have our gut wall lining, there shouldn't be big holes in there, because we're only allowing digested food particles, things that we need from our digestive system, into our bloodstream. But with an insult like antibiotics, an imbalanced gut microbiome, exposure to pesticides, other toxins, there are holes that now happen in this wall. So now undigested food, toxins, chemicals, viruses, bacteria can now enter the bloodstream. So inflammatory molecules. This can trigger systemic inflammation and also neuroinflammation. When there's neuroinflammation, it's linked to changes in focus, behavior, mood regulation, and sensory processing. Can you see this cycle, right? And again, early life antibiotic exposure is associated with higher risk of autism spectrum and ADHD related symptoms in research studies. Okay, is this making sense for you? Are you starting to connect the dots on your own journey, on your child's journey? So overall, right, antibiotics have their place. They can be life-saving, but repeated or unnecessary use can derail the gut-brain axis and the gut microbiome, and it sets the stage for neurodevelopmental, emotional, and sensory challenges. So always, root healing starts by rebuilding and rebalancing the gut, not just managing symptoms, okay? So gut health is what I want you to get out of this piece is so important, right? We need to limit toxin exposure and we need to focus on gut health. So I hope this has helped you connect the dots for yourself and your child. Again, post your aha moments in the comments, post any questions that you have in the comments. I'm here to support you. And part 4 will be coming out shortly. You will be getting a notification about that as well. Again, if you haven't yet and you're just watching on YouTube or social media, make sure that you sign up for the full masterclass to get the bonus resources, all the studies, all the research showing this, as well as books, documentaries, so that you can do your own research as well and share with family members, friends, etc. The more that we know, right, the better. I started this presentation this way, and I'm going to finish it this way. We all do the best that we can with what we know. So let's educate, let's share information, and our personal stories matter as well. I see you and I believe you. I've been there and I know what it is like. And I know that there is hope and light for you and your loved ones as well. Sending you so much love, and I will see you on the next section.